The rain had not stopped for 3 days. It hammered against the roof of Taman's house like a million tiny drums. The 8-year-old boy pressed his face against the window, watching the water rise in the streets below. It had started as puddles. Then the puddles became streams. Now the streams had become rivers that flowed between the houses of New Hadong Colony. Taman's mother, Minji, rushed through their small home, stuffing clothes and food into bags. His father, Junho, was helping their elderly neighbor climb onto their roof. Everyone in the colony knew the dam had broken upstream. The water was coming faster than anyone had expected. "Taman! Come here now!" His mother's voice was sharp with fear. The boy turned from the window. He could see the worry in her eyes. She grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the door. Outside, people were shouting. Children were crying. The emergency sirens wailed across the colony like wounded animals. They stepped outside into the rain. The water was already knee-deep on their porch. Taman gasped as the cold liquid soaked through his pants. His mother lifted him onto her hip, even though he was really too big for that now. "Where's Dad?" Taman asked. "He's helping others. We need to get to the evacuation point." Minji started wading through the water, moving toward the main street where rescue vehicles were supposed to be waiting. But the water was rising too fast. What had been knee-deep became waist-deep. Minji struggled to keep moving forward. Other colonists pushed past them, everyone desperate to reach safety. Someone bumped into Minji hard. She stumbled. Her grip on Taman loosened. "Mom!" Taman yelled as he slipped from her arms. The current grabbed him immediately. The water was not just rising, it was moving, flowing like a river through the colony streets. Taman's head went under. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't see. The world became a churning brown chaos of water and debris. His hand caught something, a piece of wood, maybe part of a fence. He held on tight and pulled his head above the water. He gasped for air and screamed for his mother, but the rain and the roar of the flood swallowed his voice. The current carried him down the street, past houses he recognized, past the school where he learned his lessons, past the park where he played with his friends. Everything looked different now. Everything looked wrong. The water had transformed his home into something strange and terrifying. Taman's piece of wood crashed into the side of a house. The impact knocked the air from his lungs, but he managed to grab onto a window frame. With all his strength, he pulled himself up and climbed onto the roof. He lay there for a moment, coughing and shaking. When he finally sat up, he looked around. The water surrounded him completely. His house was somewhere behind him, but he couldn't see it through the rain. He couldn't see his parents. He couldn't see anyone. "Mom! Dad!" he screamed into the storm. Only the rain answered him. The roof beneath him creaked. Taman crawled to the highest point and hugged his knees to his chest. He was cold. He was scared. He was alone. Night came, though it was hard to tell with the dark clouds covering everything. Taman shivered on his rooftop island. The rain lessened slightly, becoming a steady drizzle instead of a downpour. The water had stopped rising, but it showed no signs of going down. It just sat there, dark and deep, hiding the streets and the ground and everything familiar. That's when Taman saw it. Through the mist and the dim light, something huge stood in the water near what used to be the community center. At first, Taman thought it was a building he hadn't recognized. But buildings didn't have that shape. Buildings didn't move, even slightly, the way this thing was moving. He wiped the rain from his eyes and stared harder. The shape was tall, taller than any building in the colony. It had a long neck that curved up into the sky. Even in the darkness, Taman could see the outline of massive legs planted in the floodwater. Fear shot through him. What was that thing? Was it dangerous? Should he hide? But the creature didn't move toward him. It just stood there, still as a statue in the middle of the flood. Taman spent the night watching it, too afraid to sleep, too cold to do anything but shiver and stare. The creature never moved from its spot. It just stood watch over the flooded colony like some kind of guardian. When dawn finally came, gray and weak, Taman could see clearly for the first time. His breath caught in his throat. It was a dragon, not a dragon from Earth stories, but one of the real ones. The Draken. Taman had seen pictures of them in his school lessons. They were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, ancient and powerful and wise. They lived on their own worlds and rarely visited human colonies. But here one stood, right in front of him, in the middle of the flood. The Draken was enormous. Its scales were deep blue-green, like the ocean Taman had seen in videos from Earth. Its wings were folded against its back, each one large enough to cover several houses. Its head was noble and fierce, with horns that curved back from its skull. Its eyes, even from this distance, Taman could see them, glowed with a soft golden light. The dragon stood completely still in water that came up to its chest. Its massive legs were planted wide, braced against the current. Its long tail extended behind it, also submerged in the flood. Taman couldn't understand why it was there. Draken didn't care about humans, or at least that's what everyone said. They were too old, too different, too focused on their own mysterious purposes. So why would one be standing in the middle of a human colony during a flood? The boy watched as the sun climbed higher, burning away some of the mist. Other survivors appeared on other rooftops, people waving, calling out, hoping for rescue. But no rescue boats came yet. The water was still too dangerous, still flowing too fast in places. Through it all, the dragon didn't move. It stood like a mountain in the flood, unchanging and unmovable. Its golden eyes stared down at the water beneath it, at the place where the community center had been. Taman realized something then. The dragon wasn't just standing anywhere. It was standing in one specific spot. It was standing guard over something. But what? The question burned in Taman's mind as he sat on his rooftop, watching the great dragon keep its mysterious vigil in the floodwaters below. The sound of engines cut through the morning air. Taman's head snapped up at the noise. 3 rescue boats were making their way carefully through the floodwaters, navigating around debris and submerged obstacles. Relief flooded through the boy's chest. Help was coming. He stood up on the roof and waved his arms frantically. "Here! I'm here!" One of the boats changed direction, heading toward him. As it got closer, Taman recognized the driver. It was Hyunwoo, who lived 2 streets over and sometimes brought fresh vegetables to Taman's family. "Taman! Thank goodness you're alive!" Hyunwoo called out as he brought the boat alongside the house. "Your parents are worried sick. They're at the evacuation center. Come on, let's get you out of here." Taman didn't need to be told twice. He slid down the roof carefully and dropped into the boat. Hyunwoo wrapped a blanket around his shoulders. The boy hadn't realized how cold he was until the warmth surrounded him. "Did you see it?" Taman asked immediately. "Did you see the dragon?" Hyunwoo's face grew serious. He nodded. "Everyone's seen it. The whole rescue team is talking about it. Nobody knows what it's doing here." As their boat moved through the water, Taman got a better look at the dragon. In the daylight, it was even more impressive and more frightening. Each of its scales was as large as Taman's whole body. Its claws, planted in the submerged ground, were like massive metal hooks. Water flowed around its legs in swirls and eddies. But what struck Taman most was how tired the dragon looked. Its muscles trembled slightly. Its breathing seemed labored. The golden glow in its eyes had dimmed somewhat. "How long has it been standing there?" Taman asked. "Since the flood started, as far as we can tell," Hyunwoo replied. 3 days and nights, standing in the exact same spot. It hasn't moved at all." They passed close enough to the dragon that Taman could have touched its leg if he reached out. The creature didn't even glance at them. Its gaze remained fixed on the water directly below its massive body. Other rescue boats were working the area now. Taman saw people being pulled from rooftops and upper windows. He saw the boat crews navigating carefully around the dragon, giving it plenty of space but clearly confused by its presence. One boat carried a woman in a medical uniform. Jiwon was printed on her jacket. She was calling out to survivors, checking who needed immediate medical attention. When she saw Taman's boat, she waved them over. "Is the boy injured?" she asked Hyunwoo. "I don't think so. Just cold and scared." Hyunwoo looked at Taman. "Are you hurt anywhere?" Taman shook his head. He was fine, at least physically, but he couldn't stop staring at the dragon. Jiwon followed his gaze. Her expression shifted to one of wonder and confusion. "Incredible, isn't it? I've never seen a dragon up close before. None of us have." "Why won't it move?" Taman asked. "Why is it just standing there?" "That's what we're all trying to figure out," Jiwon said. "The colony administrator tried to communicate with it using the translation devices, but the dragon only said one word. Wait. Wait for what?" "Nobody knows." Jiwon looked troubled. "The problem is, that dragon is standing right where we need to search. The community center is under its feet. Several people were last seen heading there before the flood hit. We need to check if anyone's trapped inside, but we can't get to the building with that creature in the way." Taman's eyes widened. "People might be trapped under there? Under the dragon?" Hyunwoo started the boat's engine again. "We need to get this boy to the evacuation center. His parents are waiting." As they moved away from the dragon, Taman kept watching it. Something was nagging at him, something he had seen but hadn't quite registered. He squinted at the water around the dragon's legs. There. Small bubbles rising to the surface, appearing and disappearing in a steady stream. "Wait!" Taman shouted. "Stop the boat!" Hyunwoo cut the engine, surprised. "What's wrong?" "Look at the water, near the dragon's feet." Taman pointed. "There are bubbles!" Both adults stared where he was pointing. After a moment, Jiwon gasped. "He's right. Those are air bubbles. And they're coming from below, from where the community center is." Understanding dawned on Hyunwoo's face. "That means there's air down there. That means—" "People could be alive down there," Jiwon finished. "In an air pocket. Oh my God." She immediately grabbed her radio and started speaking rapidly to the other rescue teams. Within minutes, all the boats were converging on the dragon's position. Taman watched as the crews gathered, pointing at the bubbles, talking urgently among themselves. A larger boat arrived, carrying official-looking people with equipment. One of them, a man named Dae-hyun, who was the colony's chief engineer, stood up and addressed the dragon directly through a translation device. "Great Draken, can you hear me? We believe there are people trapped beneath you in the building you're standing over. We need to reach them. Will you move?" For a long moment, the dragon didn't respond. Then, slowly, its massive head turned, those golden eyes fixed on Dae-hyun. When the dragon spoke, its voice was deep and resonant, like distant thunder. The translation device rendered its words in flat, mechanical tones that couldn't capture the true sound. 17 humans shelter below. The structure is damaged. If I move, the current will collapse it. They will drown." Shocked silence fell over the rescue teams. Taman felt goosebumps rise on his arms despite the blanket. The dragon had been protecting them. For 3 whole days, it had stood there protecting trapped humans it didn't even know. Dae-hyun found his voice. How long can you hold this position?" The dragon's eyes dimmed slightly. "Not much longer. I am tired, but I will not let them die." Jiwon's hands shook as she held her radio. "We need to get them out. Now, before it's too late. For them and for the dragon." The rescue operation kicked into high gear. More boats arrived, carrying diving equipment and structural supports. Engineers studied the situation, calling out measurements and theories. Everyone worked with desperate speed, knowing that the dragon's strength was failing. Taemin watched it all from Hyun-woo's boat. The man had forgotten about taking him to the evacuation center. Everyone had forgotten about everything except the race against time happening before them. The dragon stood motionless, holding its position even as its body trembled with exhaustion. Water lapped at its chest. The rain began to fall again, harder now, as if the sky itself was crying. And Taemin understood something then, something that made his chest feel tight and his eyes sting with tears. The dragon wasn't here by accident. It hadn't just happened to be standing in that spot when the flood came. It had chosen to be there. It had chosen to stand guard. It had chosen to protect 17 human lives at the cost of its own strength, its own safety, its own comfort. A dragon, one of the ancient, powerful, supposedly aloof Draken, was sacrificing itself for humans. "We have to save them," Taemin whispered. "We have to save them all." Hyun-woo put a hand on the boy's shoulder. His voice was thick with emotion when he spoke. "We will, kid. We will." The engineers worked quickly, but not quickly enough. Taemin could see the dragon growing weaker with each passing hour. Its head drooped lower. Its breathing came in heavy, labored pulls. The trembling in its legs had become visible even from a distance. Daehyun stood in his boat with charts and diagrams spread around him, shouting instructions to the dive teams. Two divers, Minho and Yoonji, were preparing their equipment. They would be the first to go down and assess the situation beneath the dragon. "The structure is partially collapsed," Daehyun explained to the gathered rescue workers. "The dragon is literally holding up part of the roof with its body. If it moves suddenly, the whole thing comes down. We need to place support beams first, then extract the survivors one at a time through the emergency exit at the back of the building." "How long will that take?" asked Ji-won. Daehyun's face was grim. "Hours, maybe 6 or 7 hours if everything goes perfectly." Everyone looked at the dragon. Would it last that long? As if in answer, the dragon's legs buckled slightly. It caught itself, but the movement sent a ripple through the water. A groan of metal and concrete came from beneath the surface, the building shifting. "Faster!" The dragon's voice rumbled through the translator. "Work faster! I cannot hold much longer!" Minho and Yoonji plunged into the water. Taemin watched them disappear beneath the surface, their lights becoming dim glows in the murky flood. The minutes crawled by. Everyone waited in tense silence. When the divers finally surfaced, Minho pulled off his mask and gasped for air. "It's bad down there. The main support beam is cracked almost through. The only thing holding it is the dragon's right front leg. It's taking the full weight of the collapsed section on its shoulder." Yoonji added, "We can see the survivors through a gap. They're in the basement level. 17 people, like the dragon said. Mostly adults, but there are children too. Small children." Her voice cracked. "They've been down there in the dark for 3 days. 3 days. 3 days of terror, trapped in darkness, water rising around them, not knowing if anyone would come. And all that time, the dragon had stood above them, holding back the flood, holding up the building, keeping them alive." Taemin felt tears roll down his cheeks. He didn't try to wipe them away. The rescue effort intensified. More divers went down with metal supports and hydraulic jacks. They worked in the cold, dark water, trying to shore up the building from beneath. It was dangerous work. The structure could collapse at any moment, trapping the rescuers along with the people they were trying to save. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, then began to descend. The rain came and went, and through it all, the dragon stood. Taemin refused to leave. Hyun-woo had tried several times to take him to the evacuation center, but the boy wouldn't go. "I need to stay," he insisted. "I need to watch." So Hyun-woo stayed, too, keeping his boat near the rescue operation, ready to help if needed. Around mid-afternoon, disaster nearly struck. The dragon's right front leg, the one bearing most of the weight, suddenly slipped. The creature let out a sound, not quite a roar, more like a cry of pain, that echoed across the floodwaters. Everyone froze. The dragon caught itself, but not before a deep wound opened on its shoulder where the broken beam had cut into its scales. Golden blood, bright as sunshine, poured from the wound and mixed with the floodwater. "It's bleeding!" someone shouted. Jiwan's medical training kicked in immediately. "We need to treat that wound, or it will bleed out!" But how could they treat a wound on a creature so massive? And even if they could, the dragon couldn't move to let them reach it. Moving meant dropping the building. The dragon's voice came again, weaker now. "Continue. The rescue. Do not stop for me." Daehyun's face was anguished. "You're dying. We need to—" "The children," the dragon interrupted. "Save the children first." The divers worked with renewed desperation. They placed support beams, secured cables, did everything they could to stabilize the structure. Finally, after what seemed like forever, Minho surfaced with news. "The back exit is clear. We can start bringing them up." A cheer went through the rescue workers. Boats moved into position, medical personnel prepared to receive survivors, and one by one, people began to emerge from the flooded community center. The first was a man named Junho, middle-aged and shaking with exhaustion. Then came two teenage girls, Nari and Yuna, holding hands. Then more adults, office workers who had taken shelter when the flood warnings came. Each survivor that emerged was wrapped in blankets, given water, checked by the medical team, and each one, when they learned what the dragon had done, looked up at the creature with tears in their eyes. But the most emotional moment came when the children started coming up. A woman surfaced carrying a toddler, a little girl no more than 3 years old. The child was crying, frightened and confused. Behind them came more children, a whole group of them, along with another woman. Taemin recognized that second woman immediately. "Miss Sora!" he called out. "That's my teacher!" Sora taught at the colony's kindergarten. These children must have been on some kind of field trip to the community center when the flood hit. She had kept them safe in the darkness for 3 days, and now the dragon's sacrifice was bringing them back to the light. 5 children in total emerged, ranging from age 3 to 6. 5 little ones who would have drowned if not for the dragon standing guard above them. The last person to come up was another toddler, a little girl carried by Minho. She couldn't have been more than 2 years old. Her name, someone said, was Yuna. She had been at the community center's daycare. "That's everyone," Minho called out. "All 17 are safe." The moment he said it, the dragon collapsed. Its legs simply gave out, unable to hold any longer. The massive creature toppled forward into the water with a tremendous splash that sent waves rolling across the flood. Behind it, the community center building finally gave up. The structure that the dragon had protected for 72 hours crumbled into the water with a groan of breaking concrete and twisting metal. But everyone was safe. All 17 survivors were in the rescue boats, wrapped in blankets, alive. "The dragon!" Jiwan shouted. "Get to the dragon!" Boats rushed to where the creature had fallen. Its head was partially submerged, its eyes closed. Golden blood still flowed from the wound on its shoulder. It wasn't moving. Taemin couldn't breathe. After everything, after saving all those people, was the dragon going to die? Without thinking, the boy jumped from Hyunwoo's boat into the water. He was a good swimmer and the water wasn't as rough here. He swam to the dragon's head, pulled himself up onto its massive snout, and placed his small hand on the scales between its eyes. "Please don't die," he whispered. "Please, you saved them. You saved everyone. Please don't die." For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the dragon's eye opened. That golden glow, so dim now, focused on the small human boy. "The children?" The dragon's voice was barely a whisper through the translator. "Safe," Taman said, tears streaming down his face. "All of them, all 17. You saved them all." The dragon's eye closed again, but this time there was something peaceful in the gesture. "Good," it breathed. "That is good." Medical teams swarmed around the fallen dragon, but they were designed to treat humans, not massive alien creatures. They had bandages too small, medicines that might not work, equipment that couldn't handle something of this size. Jiwon stood on the dragon's shoulder, pressing claws against the wound, trying desperately to slow the bleeding. "We need help," she shouted into her radio. "We need a Draken medical team, or a xenobiologist, or someone who knows how to treat this species." But help was far away. The nearest Draken world was weeks of space travel from the colony. The dragon would die long before any help could arrive. Taman refused to move from his spot on the dragon's head. Hyunwoo had tried to pull him away, but the boy held on tight. "I'm staying with him," Taman said firmly. "He stood watch for those people. I'll stand watch for him." The rescued survivors began to gather around the dragon. Junho, still wrapped in his blanket, waded through the water to touch the dragon's side. "Thank you," he said simply. The teenage girls, Nari and Yuna, came next, then the other adults. And finally, Ms. Sora brought the children. The little ones were frightened at first. The dragon was so big, so strange. But Sora knelt beside the dragon's massive leg and placed her hand on it. "This is the one who saved us," she told them gently. "When we were scared in the dark, this brave dragon stood above us and kept us safe." One by one, the children came forward and touched the dragon, their small hands on its scales. Some of them whispered, "Thank you." Some just stood there quietly. The youngest, little Yuna, kissed the dragon's leg. Taman watched all this, and his heart felt like it would break. These people owed their lives to this creature. Everyone in the boats owed something to it. The dragon had shown them what true courage looked like. The dragon's eye opened again. It looked at the gathered humans, at the children especially. Something changed in that golden gaze, something sad and old and tired. "Why?" Taman asked suddenly. The question had been burning in him since he first saw the dragon standing in the flood. "Why did you save them? Everyone says Draken don't care about humans. Everyone says your species thinks we're too young, too simple. So why did you stand there for 3 days? Why did you hurt yourself? Why did you almost die for people you don't even know?" The dragon was quiet for a long moment. Its breathing was shallow, labored. Finally it spoke, and this time its words came slowly, each one seeming to cost it great effort. "I had a child once, long ago, by your measure of time. 300 years passed." The gathered humans fell silent, listening. "My child's name was Varenth, named for me, as is our tradition. The young Varenth was learning to fly, learning to be brave, learning to be strong." The dragon paused, gathering strength. "There was a flood on our homeworld, sudden, unexpected. Like this one, my child was playing near a river with other younglings. I was away, attending to diplomatic duties, matters I thought were important." Taman felt tears welling up in his eyes again. He knew somehow where this story was going. When the flood came, the adults nearby saved most of the younglings, but my child, my Varenth, was swept away. By the time I arrived, it was too late. The water had taken my child from me, because I was not there, because I was doing things I thought mattered more. Golden tears, bright as the blood seeping from the dragon's wound, leaked from its eyes. I swore that day that never again would I let a youngling die to water's rage. Never again would I be too busy, too important, too distant. Every flood, every disaster across every world I can reach, I search. I stand guard. I protect the young ones. Because I could not protect my own. The dragon's gaze focused on the children gathered around it. You were not strangers to me. You were the child I failed to save. Every one of you. All 17. You were my Varanth, given back to me. A chance to do what I could not do 300 years ago. How could I abandon you? How could I leave you to the water? Silence filled the air. Even the rain seemed to quiet, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Taemin couldn't hold back his sobs any longer. He pressed his face against the dragon's scales and cried, for the dragon's lost child, for the 3 days of lonely vigil, for the pain this great creature had been carrying for 3 centuries. Miss Sora was crying too. So was Jiwon. So were the teenage girls and the rescued adults and even tough, practical Hyunwoo. The children didn't fully understand, but they sensed the sadness, and some of them cried as well. "I'm sorry," Taemin whispered against the dragon's scales. "I'm so sorry about your child. I'm so sorry you lost Varanth." "Do not be sorry, little one," the dragon, the first Varanth, said gently. "My child lived with joy and died in water's grasp, but these 17, they live, because I stood watch, because I did not fail this time. My grief has purpose now. My loss has meaning." "But you're dying," Taemin said, his voice breaking. "You saved them, but now you're dying." "Better to die with purpose than to live with regret," Varanth replied. "Better to fall protecting the young than to stand by and let them perish. I am content." "No!" The shout came from Daehyun. The engineer was on his radio again, speaking rapidly. "I won't accept that. This dragon saved 17 of our people. It stood for 3 days in agony to protect lives it didn't even know. We owe it everything." He turned to the crowd. "Everyone with medical knowledge, get over here. Everyone with engineering skills, we need to stop this bleeding. Everyone else, start calling anyone you know with xenobiology training. We are not letting this dragon die." The words galvanized the rescue workers. People moved with new purpose. Someone remembered that the colony had a veterinarian named Hak Jun, who had studied large animal medicine. Someone else recalled that a cargo ship in orbit had a crew member who'd worked on a Draken world. Hyunwoo dove into the water and started salvaging materials from damaged buildings, metal plates, waterproof tarps, anything that could be used. Jiwon organized the medical team. They cleaned the wound as best they could and used welding equipment to heat-seal metal plates over it, stopping the bleeding. It was crude, but it worked. The golden blood stopped flowing. Minho and Yoonji, despite their exhaustion, went back into the water to retrieve tools and supplies. Nari and Yuna, the teenage girls, helped organize the materials as they were brought up. Even Miss Sora's kindergarten students helped, carrying small items and bringing water to the tired rescue workers. The whole colony mobilized. Everyone who had been saved, everyone who had watched the dragon's vigil, everyone who had heard the story, they all worked together to save the creature that had saved their own. And through it all, Taemin stayed on the dragon's head, his small hand resting between its eyes. Standing watch, just as Varanth had stood watch over the trapped humans. "We won't let you die," Taemin promised. "You saved us. Now we'll save you. That's what humans do. That's what good people do. We take care of those who take care of us." The dragon's eye opened one more time, looking at the boy with something that might have been surprise. "Perhaps," Varanth said softly, "I judged your species too simply. Perhaps you are not so young after all." The night came, but nobody left the dragon's side. Lights were set up on the boats, casting a warm glow across the floodwaters. The rain finally stopped completely, and stars appeared in the sky for the first time in days. They reflected on the dark water, making it look like the dragon lay in a sea of lights. Taemin's parents had finally found him. His mother, Minji, had wanted to drag him away immediately, to take him to the warm, dry evacuation center. But when she saw him sitting on the dragon's head, saw the determination in his young face, she understood. She and Junho brought blankets and hot soup instead. They stayed with their son, keeping watch alongside him. More people arrived throughout the night. Word had spread through the evacuation center about what the dragon had done, about the creature lying in the water, hurt and dying after saving 17 lives. People came to see, to help, to bear witness. The cargo ship from orbit sent down a shuttle. A crew member named Bong Su stepped out, a human who had indeed worked on a Draken world for 5 years. He had some medical knowledge, at least enough to check Varenth's vital signs and confirm what everyone feared. The dragon was dying, slowly but surely, despite their efforts to stop the bleeding. "Its body is shutting down from exhaustion," Bong Su explained quietly to Daehyun and Ji-won. 3 days of holding that weight, of fighting the current, of keeping perfectly still to protect the structure. It took everything the dragon had. Even if we could treat the wound perfectly, I'm not sure it would be enough. But nobody gave up. Hak-jun, the veterinarian, worked through the night, applying medicines and monitoring the dragon's breathing. Ji-won and her medical team took turns keeping the wound clean. Engineers led by Daehyun rigged up a support structure to take some of the weight off the dragon's body, giving it a chance to rest more comfortably. And Taemin stayed. Even when his mother begged him to sleep, he refused. "The dragon stayed awake for 3 days to protect those people," he said. "I can stay awake one night to protect the dragon." Other children joined him as the night wore on, the 5 kindergartners that Ms. Sora had kept safe. They all climbed up onto the dragon with their teacher's help. They curled up against Varenth's scales like kittens against their mother. The toddler, little Yuna, fell asleep with her tiny hand pressed against the dragon's neck. The teenage girls, Nari and Yuna, the older Yuna, not the toddler, sat on the dragon's back. The adults who had been rescued, Junho and the others, stood in the water nearby, unwilling to leave. They had spent 3 days in darkness with the dragon standing guard above them. Now it was their turn to stand guard. Somewhere around midnight, something unexpected happened. A different kind of ship descended from the sky. This one was sleek and elegant, with lines that suggested it was built for beauty as much as function. It bore markings that Bong Su recognized immediately. "That's a Draken diplomatic vessel," he breathed. "How did they get here so fast?" The ship landed on what had been the colony's central square, now partially submerged. A ramp extended, and a Draken emerged, smaller than Varenth, but still massive by human standards. Its scales were silver-white, and it moved with obvious urgency. The Draken flew over the water, its great wings creating waves, and landed near Varenth's head. It spoke in the deep, resonant language of its species. The translation devices rendered its words, "Varenth, you old fool. When we heard you were here, we came as fast as we could." The dragon ambassador, for that's clearly what it was, turned to address the gathered humans. "I am Kaelor of the Draken Council. We received word that one of our kind was injured saving humans. We came to offer assistance." Daehyun stepped forward. "We're grateful for any help. Your fellow Draken saved 17 of our people. It stood guard for 3 days, protecting them even at the cost of its own health. We've been trying to save it, but—" "I know what Varenth did," Kaelor interrupted. Not rudely, but with a certain urgency. "All of Draken space knows. Word travels fast among our kind when one of us does something remarkable. And this is very remarkable indeed." The silver dragon moved closer to Varenth, examining the wound, checking the other dragon's breathing and heartbeat. It spoke in the Draken language, a private conversation that the translators didn't pick up. Finally, Kaelor turned back to the humans. "Varenth will live. The medical supplies we brought, combined with the excellent emergency care you've already provided, will be sufficient. It will take time to recover, but this stubborn guardian will see many more years." A cheer went up from the gathered crowd. Taman felt like his heart would burst with relief and joy. The dragon would live. After everything, Varenth would live. As Kylor and the medical team from the diplomatic ship began treating Varenth properly, the ambassador spoke again. "I must tell you all something. The Draken have watched humanity for many years. We thought you were young, impulsive, short-lived. We thought you did not understand sacrifice, did not grasp the long view of things. We were wrong." Kylor's gaze swept over the crowd, the exhausted rescue workers, the survivors keeping watch, the children sleeping on Varenth's back, the medical teams still working despite their fatigue. Varenth has carried grief for 3 centuries. In all that time, no Draken thought to ease that burden. We called it personal sorrow, respected the distance that grief creates. But you humans, you who knew this dragon for mere hours, you saw the sacrifice, understood the pain, and moved mountains to honor it. You taught us something tonight about compassion, about community, about the true meaning of repaying a debt. The ambassador paused, then said something that would echo through both Draken and human space for years to come. "Perhaps it is not humanity that is young, but we Draken who have grown old and forgotten what it means to care fiercely and immediately for those who protect us." Days passed. The floodwaters receded slowly, revealing the damage to the colony. Much would need to be rebuilt. Many homes were destroyed, but everyone was alive. The evacuation had saved most people, and Varenth's vigil had saved the rest. The dragon recovered in place, unable to be moved safely for several days. The colony adapted. Children came every day to sit with Varenth and tell its stories. Adults brought food. Though the dragon ate very little, it appreciated the gesture. Artists began painting the scene on buildings and walls throughout the colony. Taman came every single day, climbing up to sit on the dragon's head and talk to it. He told Varenth about school, about his friends, about his hopes and dreams. And Varenth listened, those golden eyes warm with something that might have been grandfatherly affection. On the day Varenth was finally strong enough to stand, the whole colony gathered to watch. The great dragon rose slowly, testing its legs, spreading its wings for the first time in over a week. The cheer that went up could probably be heard in orbit, but Varenth didn't leave. Not yet. The dragon had one more thing to do. It asked for Taman. The boy came immediately, walking through the crowd that parted for him. He stood before the massive dragon, so small in comparison, but somehow not afraid. "Taman," Varenth said, and this time the dragon's voice needed no translator. It had learned to speak human languages during its recovery. "You kept watch over me when I fell. You stood guard as I had stood guard. You are young by years, but old in spirit. I would name you kin, if you accept. In Draken tradition, I would call you Heart Brother." Taman didn't fully understand all that the title meant, but he understood enough. Tears streamed down his face as he nodded. "I accept. I would be honored to be your heart brother, Varenth." The dragon lowered its great head, and Taman embraced it as much as his small arms could manage. The crowd watched in awed silence as a bond formed between human and Draken, between the ancient and the young, between two people who had both learned something about the other's kind. When Varenth finally left the colony, flying into the sky with powerful beats of its wings, it didn't say goodbye. "I will return," the dragon promised. "A heart brother does not abandon family." True to its word, Varenth visited the colony regularly. And wherever the dragon went in the galaxy, it told the story of New Hadong, of 17 humans saved, of a small boy who kept watch, of an entire community that worked together to save a life. The story spread through both human and Draken space. It changed things. Draken began to see humans differently, not as too young, but as different, with a kind of fierce, immediate compassion that their own long-lived species had forgotten. And humans began to understand that the ancient, supposedly aloof Draken were capable of incredible sacrifice and carried depths of emotion that time had not diminished. A memorial was built where Varanth had stood, a statue showing a dragon with its wings spread protectively, sheltering 17 stars that represented the saved lives. At the base, words were carved in both human and Draken languages. Here stood Varanth, who taught us that heroism knows no species, that grief can become purpose, and that one being's determination to protect the innocent can change 2 worlds forever. Taemin visited the memorial often as he grew older, and sometimes when he stood there, he could almost feel the weight of the dragon standing guard again, could almost hear that deep, gentle voice saying, "The children, save the children first." And Taemin would whisper back, "We did. We saved them all. We saved you too. Because that's what family does."